In the crowded markets of old Baghdad, where the scent of spices and perfumes filled the air and merchants called out their prices from every corner, a poor porter was hired by 3 veiled women to carry their shopping. He followed them through the winding streets, past stalls and mosques, until they stopped at a hidden house with a blue door. What he found inside would change everything he thought he knew about the city he had lived in his whole life. Chapter 1. The Market and the Mysterious Women. The morning was hot, and the market was crowded, and the porter had been squatting in the shade of a fig stall for over an hour, waiting for someone to hire him. Sweat ran down the back of his neck. Merchants called out their prices, donkeys brayed, and the air was thick with the smell of spices and frying bread. He was a strong man in his early 30s, broad-shouldered and quick to smile, but his life was simple. He carried burdens for other people and took whatever coins they gave him. It was not a glamorous life, but it was honest, and it kept his family fed. Then he saw them, 3 women, walking through the market with the easy confidence of people who had money to spend and knew exactly how to spend it. They were veiled in silk of different colors, but even through the fabric he could tell they were beautiful. Their clothes were fine, their hands were delicate and adorned with rings, and they moved through the crowd like ships cutting through water, parting the people before them without even trying. The eldest stopped in front of him and spoke without preamble. "Porter, come with us. We have shopping to do, and we need a strong back." He followed them, stepping quickly to keep up. First to the perfumer, where the youngest woman bought rose water, jasmine oil, and a small crystal vial of ambergris that cost more than the porter earned in 3 months of carrying loads. Then to the fruit seller, where the second woman filled large baskets with pomegranates, figs, dates, and clusters of green and purple grapes. Then to the jeweler, where the eldest woman examined several silver bracelets before choosing to, and then a necklace of deep blue lapis lazuli that caught the sunlight and seemed to glow from within. By the time they were finished, the porter was loaded down with bundles, carrying what felt like a small fortune on his back. They led him through the winding streets of Baghdad, past the grand mosque with its blue tiles and the public baths where steam rose into the morning air, deeper into the old quarter where the alleys narrowed until 2 men could barely walk abreast and the houses pressed together like old friends. They stopped at a door, a blue door painted the deep color of the sea at twilight, set into a white wall that had no windows facing the street. One of the women produced an iron key from a fold in her robe. The lock turned with a solid click. The door swung open, and the porter followed them into a world he had not known existed. Chapter 2. The House Behind the Walls. The house was a paradise hidden behind that simple blue door. The courtyard was paved with gleaming white marble and shaded by a vine-covered trellis heavy with jasmine and bougainvillea. A fountain burbled in the center of the space, its water catching the sunlight and scattering it in all directions like scattered diamonds. Silk carpets in deep reds and blues covered the floors. Cushions embroidered with gold thread were arranged around low tables of polished wood, laden with bowls of fruit and pitchers of sherbet and plates of sweet pastries dusted with powdered sugar. The porter stood in the middle of the courtyard, still carrying his bundles, his mouth hanging open. He had never seen a house like this. He had not even known houses like this existed in Baghdad. The 3 women laughed at his expression, and the youngest one took the bundles from his arms and set them aside. "Stay and eat with us," she said. "You have worked hard. You deserve to rest." The porter hesitated. He was a poor man, and these were clearly women of wealth and status. But they insisted, and their warmth was genuine, and he was hungry. He sat down on the cushions and accepted a bowl of dates and a cup of chilled sherbet. But before they began their meal, the eldest woman leaned forward and fixed him with a look that was not unkind but was serious. "There is one rule in this house," she said. "You may eat with us and drink with us and enjoy our company, but you must never ask questions about what you see. You must never pry into our affairs. If you break this rule, you will be thrown out and never allowed to return." The porter nodded. He agreed. He meant it when he agreed. But he was about to learn that some rules are harder to keep than they seem. Chapter 3. The Three Sisters. The evening unfolded like a dream. The women brought out dish after dish of food: roasted lamb with almonds, rice with saffron, stuffed vegetables, fresh bread, honey-soaked pastries. They ate and laughed and told stories. The porter learned their names through the course of the evening. The eldest was Amina. She was tall and graceful, and carried herself with a quiet dignity. The second was Layla, quick to laugh, but with a sadness that flickered behind her eyes. The youngest was Yasmin, who was the most beautiful of them all, but also the most guarded. As the evening wore on, the porter began to notice things, small things that did not fit the picture of peaceful wealth. Amina kept her left hand covered at all times, even when she ate. He caught a glimpse once of scarring. Layla sometimes looked across the courtyard at two black dogs chained near the fountain, and when she did, her eyes filled with tears. Yasmin, for all her beauty, barely touched her food. She sat with her hands folded in her lap and seemed to be waiting for something the porter wanted to ask. The questions burned at the tip of his tongue, but he remembered the rule and kept his mouth shut. He ate another date and drank more sherbet and told himself he did not need to know. But the mystery of the house and the three women had already taken root in his mind. He would not sleep peacefully until he understood. The night grew deeper, the candles burned lower, and the eldest sister, Amina, finally spoke. "You have been patient," she said. "You have not asked the questions that are clearly on your mind. For that, we will reward you with the truth. We will tell you our stories, and when you have heard them, you will understand why we live as we do." Chapter 4. The scar on her hand. Amina spoke first. Her voice was steady and calm, but her hands trembled slightly in her lap as she began to tell her story to the quiet courtyard. She had been married for 10 years to a wealthy merchant. Their life had been good, better than most. He was kind to her and generous, always bringing her gifts from his travels. They had a son and a daughter. She thought she was happy, the way people think they are happy when they have never known real unhappiness. Then the jealousy started. It was small at first, almost invisible. A question about where she had been. A raised eyebrow when she came home from the market a few minutes late. A cold silence at dinner for no obvious reason, but it grew month by month, like a weed spreading through a garden that nobody was tending. One afternoon, her husband accused her of meeting another man while he was away on business. The accusation was completely false, built on nothing but the whispers of a spiteful neighbor. Amina denied it with all her heart. She swore on the lives of her children. He did not believe her. All the love he had once felt for her had curdled into something dark and possessive. He took her left hand in his own, kissed it once, and cut it off with a single clean stroke of his knife. She remembered the sound it made, a sound she would never forget. She woke up lying in the street outside their house, bleeding into the dust. her hand wrapped in a strip of cloth he had tied around the wound with rough efficiency. A passing surgeon found her and saved her life, but she never went back to that house. She never saw her children again. She moved across the city and built a new life with her sisters, who took her in without questions. The scar beneath her sleeve was a permanent reminder that love, when it turns rotten, can destroy everything it touches. Chapter 5. The Black Dogs. When Amina finished her story, Layla took a deep breath and began hers. She had been the second wife of a wealthy spice merchant. Her position in the household was comfortable but precarious. The first wife resented her, and the servants whispered behind her back, but she endured it because she loved her husband, or at least she thought she did. Her sisters, blood sisters, lived in the same city. They visited often. They sat with her in the garden and listened to her complaints. They seemed kind, but they were not kind. They were patient and calculating. They wanted what she had, her husband's attention, his money, his house. Over the course of a year, they poisoned her marriage systematically. A word here, a rumor there, a carefully staged misunderstanding. Her husband turned against her. He threw her out of the house. Her sisters took her place at his side. They took her jewelry. They took her clothes. They took everything. Layla wandered the streets of Baghdad for weeks, homeless and hopeless. She came across an old woman in a cemetery who heard her story and took pity on her. The old woman was not what she seemed. She was a sorceress, one of the last of her kind. She offered Layla a choice. She could have revenge against her sisters, or she could have justice. Layla chose both. The sorceress turned the two sisters into black dogs and bound them to Layla's service. Every night, Layla must beat them until they howl. Only then does the curse hold. If she stops, they will become human again, and they will try to kill her. The two black dogs, chained near the fountain, were her own flesh and blood, transformed by magic into beasts, and Layla was trapped in the terrible duty of punishing them forever. Chapter 6. The Youngest's Secret. When Layla finished, all eyes turned to Yasmin, the youngest sister. She had been silent through both stories, her face pale in the candlelight. The eldest sister, Amina, urged her to speak, but Yasmin shook her head. She could not, she would not. The story she carried was too heavy. The porter watched her struggle. He felt a surge of pity for her, but also frustration. He had heard two terrible stories. He needed to know the third. He forgot the rule. He forgot the warning. He leaned forward and pressed her for an answer. "Tell me," he said. "Tell me your story. I have a right to know, after everything I have heard tonight." Yasmin's face went white. She stood up slowly, her eyes fixed on him with an expression he could not read. She left the courtyard without a word. The mood in the room turned cold. The other sisters looked at the porter with disappointment and anger. "You broke the rule," Amina said. "You were warned. Now you must face the consequences." The porter felt his stomach drop. He stood up, ready to apologize, ready to leave. But before he could speak, Yasmin returned. She was not alone. Behind her, walking slowly into the candlelight, was a fourth woman. She was veiled in black silk, her face hidden, her steps measured and regal. The three sisters rose to greet her with deep respect. The porter stood frozen, not understanding. Yasmin spoke at last. "You wanted a story," she said. "You will have one, but it is not my story to tell. It is hers." Chapter 7. The Guest in the Fourth Room. The fourth woman sat down on the largest cushion and removed her veil. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with dark eyes that seemed to hold centuries of sorrow. Her skin was pale, the color of moonlight, and her hair fell around her shoulders like a black river. She looked like a queen who had lost her kingdom. She told them her name. It was a royal name, one that the porter recognized from stories he had heard as a child. She was a princess from a distant kingdom, a land of mountains and rivers that lay beyond the eastern deserts. She had been kidnapped on the night of her wedding, taken from her chambers by a creature of smoke and fire, a jinni of immense power who had fallen in love with her from afar. The jinni had carried her across half the world to a palace hidden in the clouds. He had given her everything she could want: jewels, silks, servants, a garden that bloomed all year round. But she was a prisoner. She could not leave. She could not see her family. She could not even stand at a window without the jinni appearing to ask her what was wrong. She had escaped by sheer cleverness. She had pretended to love the jinni. She had made him trust her. And one night, while he slept, she had stolen a ring that contained a fragment of his power and used it to open a door that should not have been opened. She fled through the mountains and the deserts for months, always looking over her shoulder until she reached Baghdad and collapsed in the street. The three sisters found her there, half dead from exhaustion, and took her in. Chapter 8. The Princess's Home. The princess had been living in the hidden room at the back of the courtyard for nearly a year. The three sisters had kept her presence a secret from everyone: neighbors, servants, even the delivery men who brought food and supplies. If the jinni found her, he would destroy everything. He would burn the house to the ground. He would kill anyone who had helped her. The porter listened in stunned silence. He had walked into a house full of women, each carrying a burden of pain and fear that he could barely comprehend. A woman whose husband had cut off her hand, a woman who was forced to beat her own sisters every night, a princess hiding from an immortal stalker, and a younger sister who acted as the guardian of it all. The porter wanted to help. He asked what he could do. The princess shook her head sadly. "No one can help me," she said. "The jinni will find me eventually. He always finds me. The only question is when." That night, the women decided to tell one more story, a story of hope, a story about how the first of the three sisters, Amina, had found the hidden room and the princess inside. It was a story about fate and coincidence, and the strange way that broken people sometimes find each other and make each other whole. The princess listened with tears in her eyes. The porter listened with a new understanding of the world he lived in, a world where pain was hidden behind beautiful doors. Chapter 9. The Genie's Arrival. The house shook. It started as a low rumble, like distant thunder rolling across a desert. The fountain rippled. The candles flickered and bent sideways. The water in the pool trembled, as if something enormous was moving beneath it. The princess went pale. The three sisters stood up, their faces frozen in fear. The jinni had found them. His voice came from everywhere at once, filling the courtyard like smoke. It was deep and cold, the voice of something ancient that had never learned mercy. "I have searched for you across half the world," he said. "I have torn apart cities looking for you, and now I have found you, hiding in a house with a blue door in the city of Baghdad. You cannot run from me again. You will come home with me, or everyone in this house will die." The princess stepped forward. Her voice was small but steady. "Let them go," she said. They have done nothing to you. They took me in when I was starving. They saved my life. Let them go, and I will come with you willingly." The genie laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "I will let no one go," he said. "They have hidden you from me. That is a crime that demands punishment. All of you will suffer." But Yasmin, the youngest sister, had been thinking. While the others were frozen with fear, she had been searching her memory. In the stories her grandmother had told her as a child, there was a way to bind an ancient oath, older than Solomon, that could force any creature of smoke and fire to obey a command. She just needed to remember the words. Chapter 10. The Bargain. Yasmin stepped forward, placing herself between the genie and the princess. Her voice was trembling, but she forced the words out. She spoke in a language that nobody in the courtyard recognized, a language older than Arabic, older than any human tongue. The genie stopped laughing. His form, which had been dark and shapeless, began to solidify. He was listening. Yasmin had found the words. She was reciting an ancient oath of binding, passed down through generations of women in her family, a spell that could hold a genie in place and force him to obey. The genie struggled against it. The house shook harder. Cracks appeared in the marble. The fountain shattered. But Yasmin kept speaking. She offered him a bargain. The princess would be free. The genie would leave Baghdad and never return. In exchange, Yasmin would give him something he wanted more than vengeance. She would give him her own freedom. She would go with him in the princess's place. The genie paused. He considered the offer, a princess who hated him, or a clever woman who had found the words to bind him, a woman who might one day learn to love him, or at least to respect him. He accepted. The princess screamed. Layla and Amina grabbed Yasmin's arms and tried to pull her back, but Yasmin was calm. She had made her choice. She kissed her sisters goodbye, embraced the princess, and walked toward the genie without looking back. The genie wrapped himself around her like a shroud of smoke. The house shook one final time, and then they were gone. Chapter 11. The Breaking of Chains. The genie's departure broke the magic that had held the house together. The curse on the two black dogs shattered like glass. The dogs howled once, twisted, and transformed back into the women they had once been, the treacherous sisters who had betrayed Layla. They stood in the courtyard, blinking in the candlelight, human again after years of being beasts. Layla stared at them. She did not know whether to embrace them or kill them. The sisters fell to their knees and begged for forgiveness. They had been trapped in the bodies of dogs all those years, fully conscious, aware of everything that had happened. They had watched Layla beat them night after night. They had lived through every blow, and they had had time to regret everything they had done. Layla looked at them for a long time. Then she knelt down and embraced them. The princess was free. The curse was broken. But Yasmin was gone. The price of their freedom had been paid by the youngest sister, who had traded her life for theirs. Amina sat down beside the shattered fountain and wept. Layla held her transformed sisters and wept with her. The porter stood in the corner, unable to speak, unable to move. The house with the blue door was silent, but it was no longer a house of secrets. It was a house of women who had survived terrible things and were learning, slowly, to live again. Chapter 12. The New Beginning. The porter left the house at dawn. When the first pale light was touching the rooftops of Baghdad and the muezzin's call to prayer was echoing from 100 minarets across the sleeping city, He walked through streets he had walked 1,000 times before, but they looked completely different now. The city was full of hidden doors and secret lives. Every veiled woman he passed could be carrying a story as heavy as the ones he had heard that night. Every quiet house could be hiding a princess or a curse or a woman who had sacrificed everything for love. He never returned to the blue door. He did not need to. The house and the women inside it had changed him in ways he could not fully explain or even fully understand. He stopped complaining about his simple life. He stopped envying the rich merchants who rode through the streets on fine horses. He had seen what wealth looked like behind closed doors, and it looked like a woman hiding a scar, sisters trapped in the bodies of dogs, and a princess who could not leave a single room. Months passed after that night. The porter heard rumors, sometimes fragments of stories that drifted through the market. A veiled woman was seen walking through the spice stalls with two sisters who matched her stride perfectly and laughed like they had been given a second chance at life. A princess had been spotted at the caliph's palace, and it was said she told a story so moving that the caliph himself wept. And somewhere far away, in a palace hidden in the clouds beyond the eastern mountains, a clever woman named Yasmin was slowly teaching an ancient jinni what it meant to love someone without trapping them. The porter went back to carrying loads for strangers, the same work he had always done, but he carried them differently now. They felt lighter somehow. He had learned that the heaviest burdens are not the ones you carry on your back. They are the ones you carry in your heart, the stories you cannot tell. And the women behind the blue door had taught him that even the heaviest of burdens can be shared, if you find the right people to share them with. The end.